Imagine this. The ground trembles beneath your feet. A low vibration hums up through the soil, a steady pulse like the beating of a heart. Somewhere beyond the haze of dawn, branches sway, birds scatter into the sky, and the air thickens with tension. Then it comes. A colossal shadow stretches across the earth. Her neck rises higher than the trees, swaying like a tower of living bone and muscle. Massive feet press into the ground, each step leaving craters as wide as small ponds. This is no myth, no nightmare, no creature conjured from imagination. This is a dinosaur. And here is the question that has drawn scientists, storytellers, and dreamers for centuries. How did these creatures come to rule the earth? The answer begins not with giants, but with survivors. Not with the thundering roars of titans, but with whispers in the dark. For the world the dinosaurs inherited was not a paradise. It was a scarred wasteland, broken by fire and death. Yet from that devastation they rose. Even today, 65 million years after the last of them vanished, dinosaurs are more popular than ever. Their skeletons dominate museum halls. Their likenesses stalk across movie screens. Their names echo in every culture. Tyrannosaurus rex, Velociraptor, Triceratops, Brachiosaurus. But why does their story still capture us? Why do we keep asking questions about them? The answer lies in contrast. Dinosaurs were both terrifying and beautiful, monstrous and elegant, alien and yet strangely familiar. Some stretched longer than blue whales, their necks sweeping over forests like cranes of flesh and bone. Others were small, agile hunters, no larger than a turkey, their eyes gleaming with intelligence as sharp claws tapped across ancient ground. But here is the twist. We still don't know everything. For every answer we uncover, new mysteries unfold. Did dinosaurs sing like birds? Did they care for their young like parents, or abandon them like reptiles? Did their colors blaze in vibrant reds and blues, or were they cloaked in drab camouflage? And above all, what really ended their reign? Tonight, we will travel across 180 million years of Earth's history, from the broken world of the Triassic, where dinosaurs first crept in the shadows, to the towering giants of the Jurassic, to the defenders and hunters of the Cretaceous. We will witness their rise to dominance, their reign as rulers, and their catastrophic fall. But beware, this is no straight march of time. Every step of this journey hides surprises. Because in the world of dinosaurs, nothing is ever as it first seems. What force could topple the giants? What predator could challenge a king? And what mystery could still lie waiting beneath the rock? Each question will lead us deeper. Each answer will twist the story further. And each revelation will leave us on the edge of another mystery. To understand dinosaurs, we must first step into their world. Close your eyes, if you like, and picture the Earth as it was before their reign. The continents were not as we know them today. All land was joined together in one supercontinent, Pangaea. From horizon to horizon stretched deserts vast as oceans, broken by patches of forest clinging to rivers and lakes. Winds whipped across open plains, carrying dust that stung the lungs. Volcanoes belched ash into skies already heavy with heat. It was a world harsh and unstable. And yet, from this crucible of fire and drought, new life stirred. Creatures crawled, limped, ran and swam. Crocodile-like predators stalked the waters. Mammal-like reptiles with saber teeth prowled the land. Amphibians the length of buses lurked in swamps. But hidden among them, barely noticed, were the first dinosaurs. Small, fragile, swift. Not yet rulers, not yet kings, only sparks waiting to ignite. Here's the suspense. Why them? Why did these small shadows, outnumbered and outmatched, eventually rise to conquer the world? The answer is not simple. It is a tale of anatomy and chance, of lungs and bones, of speed and resilience. But the twist is this. The dinosaurs' rule was never guaranteed. At any moment, catastrophe could have ended them before they began. And yet, they survived. This is their story. A story that will carry us from the first whispers of the Triassic, through the thunder of the Jurassic, to the twilight of the Cretaceous. A story not only of bones and teeth, but of survival, triumph, and the mysteries still locked in stone. But be warned, each chapter will not close with answers, but with questions. For the dinosaurs, like the Earth itself, keep their greatest secrets close. Imagine standing on the edge of Pangaea's desert 230 million years ago. You see two creatures emerge. One, a crocodile-like predator with armored scales. The other, a small, fragile dinosaur darting on two legs. Which would you bet on to inherit the Earth? The armored reptile, or the fragile shadow? Tell us below. The stage is set. The world is broken. The survivors are strange and fierce. And into this crucible, the first dinosaurs step small, quick, and unremarkable. But do not underestimate them. For from these sparks will rise the thunder of giants. The Triassic begins now. Before the age of dinosaurs, there was silence. The Earth had just endured its greatest catastrophe, the Permian extinction. More than 90% of all species had vanished. Coral reefs collapsed. Insects nearly disappeared. Entire forests withered into ash. The oceans, once teeming with life, became graveyards of stagnant water. So here is the question. Why didn't life end altogether? The answer lies in resilience. A handful of species endured, some by sheer chance, others by hidden strengths in their anatomy or behavior. These survivors became the seeds of a new world. But the twist is this. Survival came at a cost. The world they inherited was unstable, punishing, and often deadly. For millions of years, every breath, every step was a gamble. And in that gamble, dinosaurs appeared. Picture a Triassic plain. The air is dry and sharp, carrying the smell of volcanic ash. The horizon shimmers with heat. Scattered across the landscape are patches of hardy vegetation, ferns, cycads, and conifers clinging to life in the parched soil. From the brush darts a small creature, no taller than your knee. It moves on two legs, nimble and fast, its tail stretched out for balance. Its teeth are sharp, its eyes alert. This is one of the first dinosaurs, not a giant, not a monster, but a fragile survivor, eking out a living in the shadows of stronger predators. Now imagine a larger shape emerging from the riverbank. A predator armored with scales, its jaws lined with teeth like daggers. In this world, dinosaurs are not rulers, they are prey. So here is the suspense. What chance did such small, fragile creatures have against monsters like these? This is the puzzle that captivates us even now. Dinosaurs were not born kings. They clawed their way to power. And in that struggle lies the drama that makes their story irresistible. We look at their bones in museums and wonder, what were their colors? How did they sound? Did they move with grace or with thunder? Science provides answers, but never all of them. Fossils whisper fragments, a claw here, a feather there, a footprint frozen in mud. Each clue pulls us deeper. Each discovery tells part of the story, but also reveals how much we still do not know. And here is the twist. Sometimes, the truth is stranger than we dared imagine. Dinosaurs once thought to be slow, dim-witted reptiles are now revealed as agile, intelligent, and diverse. Some had feathers, some cared for their young, some may have sung in voices we can barely begin to reconstruct. Every discovery turns myth into reality, and then creates new myths waiting to be explored. So tonight we will follow their path, from the humble shadows of the Triassic to the towering giants of the Jurassic, from the armored defenders of the Cretaceous to the hunters that reigned as apex predators. We will stand at the dig sites where their bones were first uncovered. We will follow the rivalries of scientists who fought to define them. We will watch their kingdom rise, and we will watch it fall, in fire and darkness. But remember, every chapter ends not with answers, but with questions, because that is how the story of dinosaurs works. They give us glimpses, never the whole picture. Already, questions stir. What allowed these creatures to survive when others perished? What force could topple even the giants of the Jurassic? What really ended their reign? Was it the sky, the earth, or something more complex? Each question waits like a locked door. Each chapter of this journey will hand us a key, only to reveal another door behind it. And in the end, when the dust of extinction has settled, one last question will linger. Did the dinosaurs ever truly vanish? Pause for a moment and imagine the scale. 180 million years. Nearly 3 times longer than the span of time between the extinction of dinosaurs and today. Whole mountain ranges rose and eroded in the time they lived. Oceans opened and closed. Forests grew, burned and grew again. And through it all, dinosaurs walked, ran, hunted, grazed, and ruled. To compare, humanity's entire history, from the first stone tools to the skyscrapers of today, is but a blink compared to their reign. There is comfort, almost, in that perspective. Comfort in knowing we are not the first rulers of the earth, and we may not be the last. Imagine being given a time machine with one destination only, the Triassic. You step out onto the cracked earth of Pangaea, and in the distance, 2 shapes move, a crocodile-like predator and a small, nimble dinosaur. Would you follow the predator, confident in its power, or the dinosaur, fragile but full of potential? Tell us below. The world is scarred. The survivors are strange. The air is heavy with heat, the soil cracked with thirst. In the distance, shadows move, fragile creatures, overlooked, underestimated. But do not look away, for these shadows are the first sparks of something greater. The thunder has not yet begun, but soon it will shake the earth. The Triassic is waiting, and here is the twist. They were not the future. Among the brush and the cracked soil moved something different. They were small, almost forgettable, some no longer than a dog, their bones hollow, their legs tucked neatly beneath their bodies. Their speed was their weapon, their sharp teeth were their advantage. Their lungs and blood carried oxygen more efficiently than their rivals. These were the first dinosaurs, shadows at the edge of survival. But suspense lingers. How could such fragile sparks rise in a world ruled by monsters far larger and stronger? The Triassic was an age of experiments. Evolution threw dice across the landscape, and the winners were not always the most obvious. In the deserts of what is now South America, one such experiment left its mark in stone. When paleontologists unearthed the remains of Eoraptor, they uncovered a blueprint of what was to come. Small, light, balanced on 2 legs, Eoraptor carried serrated teeth sharp enough to slice through flesh. Its body told a story of agility and energy, traits that would define its descendants. And yet, even Eoraptor was not alone in this unfolding drama. Another hunter prowled the Triassic plains, larger, heavier, and far more fearsome. Its name was Herrerasaurus. Sleek and powerful, it stretched nearly 10 feet long, a predator that relied on speed and raw muscle. Its jaws were filled with blades. Its arms, though short, ended in claws that could hook and tear. Herrerasaurus was among the first true rulers of the dinosaur line. But here lies the twist. For all their innovation, even these predators were still in the shadows of greater beasts. Across the rivers lay phytosaurs, long-snouted hunters, armored and massive, their bodies almost indistinguishable from the crocodiles we know today. On the plains stalked rauisuchians, towering reptiles with legs beneath their bodies and skulls as large as a man's chest. Against these monsters, dinosaurs were still newcomers, outsiders, fragile creatures with potential, but not yet dominance. So the question returns, why them? Why, in the long game of survival, did these smaller shadows rise above all others? The answer is hidden in their very bodies. Unlike most reptiles, dinosaurs carried their legs directly beneath them, not sprawled to the side. This posture gave them endurance. They could run without collapsing under their own weight, chase prey longer, and escape predators with a grace that sprawling creatures could not match. Their bones, hollow and light, supported speed without sacrificing strength. Their lungs pumped with efficiency, pushing oxygen through their bodies in a way that kept them moving when others faltered. The twist is simple but profound. They were built not merely to live but to last. For millions of years, dinosaurs remained the underdogs. They survived, yes, but they did not yet dominate. The Triassic remained a world of fierce competition. Mammal-like reptiles snarled across the plains. Giant amphibians lurked. The Triassic world was a place of scars. The Earth bore the wounds of the greatest catastrophe in its history, the Permian extinction. Whole forests had been turned to ash, oceans poisoned until they suffocated life, and deserts stretched wider than seas. More than 90% of species had perished. It was a silence that must have felt eternal, but silence never lasts. In the aftermath, survivors crept back into the empty spaces. The question is simple: who would inherit this broken Earth? The first contenders were not the dinosaurs. They were the holdovers of the old world, crocodile-like hunters with armored hides, lumbering amphibians that slithered through swamps, and saber-mouthed reptiles with bodies halfway between beast and reptile. These were the predators and scavengers that filled the gaps left behind. They were strong, fearsome, and already well adapted to survival, ked in waterways. Crocodile cousins ruled riverbanks with jaws like traps. Dinosaurs darted between them, surviving by wit, speed, and adaptability. But something was shifting. The climate was changing again. The Earth trembled with volcanic fire as Pangaea cracked. Old rulers began to falter, and in their place, the fragile shadows began to spread. This is the suspense. The dynasty of dinosaurs was not born in a single moment, nor in a single species. It was forged in struggle, tempered by fire, and sharpened by time. Still, the question remains: when did the first spark ignite into true flame? Perhaps it was when a Herrerasaurus brought down prey with swift jaws. Perhaps it was when a small Eoraptor stole food from larger hunters and fled into the brush, teeth stained with the spoils of survival. Or perhaps it was in the countless footprints pressed into Triassic mud, light, fast, and purposeful, a whisper of thunder to come. We cannot know the exact moment, but we know what followed. Because soon dinosaurs were no longer whispers. They were the beginning of a storm. The Triassic remains, for us, a half-lit stage. Fossils are rare. Entire families of creatures may still lie undiscovered. Each bone we uncover adds a fragment to the puzzle, but the full picture is still hidden, and that is the twist that keeps paleontologists digging. Somewhere, locked in stone, may be the answer to a mystery we have not yet asked. Did some Triassic dinosaurs already carry feathers? Were they already experimenting with the traits that would carry them to dominance? We will return to that mystery. You are standing on the Triassic plain. A Herrerasaurus bursts from the shadows, jaws wide, eyes fixed on you. To one side, the swamp ripples with the movements of a crocodile-like phytosaur. To the other, a herd of small, fragile dinosaurs scatter like sparks. Which way do you run, toward the swamp, or toward the herd? Tell us below. Pause for a moment and consider the scale of what we are entering. The Triassic is more than 230 million years behind us. Entire mountain ranges have risen and eroded in the time between then and now. Continents have drifted like rafts across the oceans. The world we know is unrecognizable in that ancient mirror. And yet, here we are, piecing together lives from fragments of bone, from footprints in mud, from teeth sharpened in battles long forgotten. There is a quiet awe in this. To hold a fossil of Eoraptor is to hold the dawn of a dynasty. To trace the bite marks of Herrerasaurus is to feel the pulse of a predator that once chased prey across a desert long vanished. The Earth remembers, even when we do not. The Triassic belonged to survivors, to predators armored in scale and bone, to amphibians lurking in shadow, to mammals that scurried small and secret. Dinosaurs were present, but not yet dominant. They were sparks, not flame. But sparks, given time, become fire. And fire, once lit, consumes the world. The kingdom of the dinosaurs was coming. But first, the Earth itself would test them. The Triassic was an age of testing. Every creature that survived the great extinction carried within it both strength and vulnerability. Some were destined to fade, others to transform, and a few to redefine life itself. Dinosaurs were still a small branch on the tree of survivors, but one whose roots were already spreading deeper into the future. The question hangs: what made them different enough to succeed when so many failed? The answer begins with posture. Most reptiles sprawled low, their legs splayed to the sides, their bellies brushing the earth. Dinosaurs, by contrast, lifted themselves upright, their limbs tucked directly beneath their bodies like the pillars of a building. This design unlocked endurance. They could move farther, run longer, and burn less energy in the process. While their rivals exhausted themselves in short bursts, dinosaurs simply kept going. But the twist is that upright stance offered more than stamina. It freed their lungs, allowing them to breathe in ways few creatures could match. Air swept through hollow bones and deep sacs, moving like a continuous tide rather than a shallow gasp. It was a system far more efficient than that of the predators they competed against. In the hot, unstable climates of the Triassic, this difference was everything. The world demanded endurance, and dinosaurs provided it. Still, endurance alone does not make an empire. Dinosaurs had to eat, reproduce, and protect themselves. They were small, vulnerable, and far from invincible. Every step across the Triassic plain carried the risk of ambush from a Rawasuchian or phytosaur. Every pool of water was a potential trap. The Earth was as much enemy as ally. So why did they not vanish, as so many others did? The suspense is sharpened here. Survival favors not the strongest, but the most adaptable. Dinosaurs were opportunists. Some darted after insects, others scavenged carcasses, others chased small reptiles across the sand. They filled niches their rivals ignored. They did not need to dominate yet, they only needed to persist, and persist they did. But persistence would not be enough forever. The Earth was about to change again. Volcanoes shook the land as Pangaea began to crack. Whole regions split apart, carving rifts that spewed fire and ash into the skies. Rivers shifted, climates swung wildly, deserts expanded and collapsed. For the old rulers of the Triassic, the upheaval was too much. Amphibians that once sprawled across swamps found their watery homes drying to dust. Armored reptiles that thrived on stability faltered when their hunting grounds shifted beneath their feet. One by one, the giants of the old order faded, and this is the twist. While others failed, dinosaurs thrived in the chaos. Their bodies, designed for movement and resilience, allowed them to cross new lands and chase new opportunities. Where rivers vanished, they found food in dry forests. Where deserts stretched, their endurance kept them alive when others fell. They were not only survivors of disaster, they were beneficiaries of it. Still, suspense lingers, because at this point, dinosaurs were not yet the thunderous giants we picture. They were small, quick-footed, experimental in form and function. Their true transformation was still to come. But hints of that future already stirred. Fossils revealed that some early dinosaurs grew faster than their rivals, reaching maturity quickly, reproducing at rates that gave them an edge. Others already bore traits that would later blossom into dominance: serrated teeth sharper than steel, claws capable of rending flesh, and tails that balanced their bodies for speed. Evolution was laying foundations for rulers yet unseen. In the Triassic night, beneath a sky filled with strange stars, Predators and prey danced their endless cycle. Herrerasaurus stalked in silence, jaws poised for the strike. Small featherless forms darted into burrows or leapt between ferns. Amphibians croaked from dwindling pools. Somewhere, an armored Rauisuchian roared, its call echoing across the plain. It was a world in tension, every creature balanced between survival and extinction. And yet somewhere in that night, the future pulsed. The suspense is sharpened again. We know what happened next, but they did not. For them, every hunt, every hatchling, every drought was a gamble with no certainty of victory. They could not know that their fragile line would become the dominant force of the Mesozoic. They could not know that their footsteps would one day shake the earth. And here lies the foreshadowing. The thunder was building. Step back now and breathe. Picture the sweep of time. From our vantage, hundreds of millions of years later, we can see the arc. We can trace the bones, map the footprints, follow the layers of stone like pages in a book. But to them, there was no book, only survival. Moment by moment, breath by breath. That is the wonder of the Triassic. It was not a grand unveiling of giants, but the quiet forging of resilience. It was not the age of kings, but the childhood of an empire, the empire of dinosaurs. Still, questions remain. Did some of these early dinosaurs already experiment with feathers, long before birds? Were their colors muted, or did flashes of red and green already shimmer in the sunlight? Did they hiss, roar, or call in voices strange to our ears? The answers may yet lie beneath stone, waiting for the moment when a pickaxe strikes the right layer of rock. Until then, the mysteries deepen, and that is the twist that keeps their story alive. Every revelation is only the beginning of another suspense. Now let us set the stage for what comes next. For as the Triassic closed, fire split the earth, climates shifted, and the balance of power shattered. Many fell, dinosaurs endured, the shadows were ready to stretch. And when the Jurassic dawned, they did not creep forward quietly. They surged into giants. You stand on the edge of a Triassic rift valley, the ground trembling with volcanic fire. On one side, Herrerasaurus prowls the brush, its jaws glinting in the firelight. On the other, a herd of small dinosaurs gathers, their tails whipping as they scatter into the night. Who do you follow? The predator poised to strike, or the fragile herd that carries the future? Tell us below. The Triassic was the crucible, the forge where sparks flickered against the darkness. Dinosaurs endured, adapted, and waited. And then, as the earth split and the old rulers fell away, the sparks caught. The fire roared. The shadows of the Triassic gave way to the thunder of the Jurassic. The giants were coming. The Triassic ended in fire. Volcanoes split the land, choking the sky with ash and gas. Entire ecosystems buckled under the strain. Creatures that had ruled for millions of years, amphibians broad as boats, reptiles armored like fortresses, vanished into the void of extinction. Yet in the chaos, dinosaurs endured. When the smoke cleared, they stood ready to expand into every corner of the world. The Jurassic dawned not quietly, but with a surge of life. Across the supercontinent of Pangaea, forests thickened again. Conifers stretched high into the air. Ferns rolled like carpets across floodplains, and fresh rivers cut channels into the land. It was a world greener, wetter, more generous than the dry barrens of the Triassic. And in this new world, dinosaurs grew larger than life itself. They became giants. Sauropods were the living towers of the Jurassic. Brachiosaurus lifted its neck higher than any other, towering above the forest canopy. Diplodocus stretched longer than a city bus, its whip-like tail snapping through the air with the crack of thunder. Apatosaurus, once confused with Brontosaurus in the heated days of fossil rivalry, weighed as much as a convoy of elephants. But how could creatures so immense even exist? The secret was written into their bones. Their skeletons were not solid but latticed with air spaces, lightening the load while maintaining strength. Their lungs were equally specialized, cycling oxygen in a flow-through system that kept their massive bodies fueled. Hearts pumped with unimaginable power, forcing blood up necks longer than trucks. Yet size came with a cost. A single sauropod needed to consume mountains of vegetation each day. Herds of these giants must have reshaped landscapes, stripping forests bare before moving on in endless migration. The ground shook with their passage, entire ecosystems bent around their appetites. Still, their very size was their shield. Few predators could even dream of tackling a full-grown sauropod. Even the bravest hunter knew that one swing of a tail or one misstep beneath those pillars of legs could spell instant death. But the story does not end there. For the Jurassic was not only the age of giants, it was the age of those who dared to challenge them. In the shadows of the forests and at the edges of floodplains prowled Allosaurus, the lion of its time. Sleek, muscular, and armed with jaws like serrated hatchets, it was built not for a single devastating strike, but for repeated slashes, wearing prey down in a frenzy of bites. Fossil evidence shows healed wounds on sauropod bones, bite marks that match the jaws of Allosaurus. This predator tested even the titans. Could it truly bring down a giant? Perhaps not alone, but Allosaurus may have hunted in loose groups, circling herds, isolating the young, the weak, or the unwary. In that relentless strategy lay its power. And yet, even Allosaurus was no stranger to hunger's edge. Fossils tell another story, teeth marks on bones from its own kind, suggesting cannibalism in times of scarcity. In the Jurassic, survival demanded everything, even betrayal. Not all defenses relied on size. Some dinosaurs perfected armor and weaponry instead. The stegosaurs were strange, almost surreal, their backs lined with bony plates that rose like sails, their tails tipped with long spear-like spikes. For decades, debate raged over the purpose of those plates. Were they shields against predators, radiators for heat, bright displays for attracting mates? Perhaps all at once, but the spikes told a clearer tale. Fossil evidence shows puncture wounds in predators' bones, proof that a stegosaur's tail could drive through flesh and bone with lethal force. They were living fortresses, slower than their massive cousins but bristling with defenses. And still, despite their small brains, no larger than a walnut, stegosaurs endured across continents. Survival, it seems, does not always require intelligence, only the right tools. The Jurassic skies also belonged to giants of another kind. Pterosaurs spread their wings across the air, some small as sparrows, others spanning wings wider than cars. They were not dinosaurs but close kin, dominating the skies while their relatives ruled the land. In rivers and seas swam fish and early marine reptiles, completing a world teeming with life at every scale. It was a time of abundance, a time of spectacle. And yet beneath the surface, questions lingered. How did these ecosystems support such enormous creatures? The answer lies in the environment itself. The Jurassic was rich in oxygen and plant growth. Climate stability fueled cycles of life that could sustain giants. Herds of sauropods roamed like nomadic nations, grazing vast swaths of land before moving on, leaving behind fertilized soil that regrew plants for their return. In this cycle, both giants and their world sustained one another. But the twist is sobering. For every abundance comes balance, and balance is always fragile. When herds overgrazed, famine followed. When predators overhunted, they too starved. Even in their golden age, dinosaurs lived on the knife's edge of survival. And there is suspense yet to come. For in the shadows of this age of colossi, smaller, quicker forms were stirring. Raptors, early cousins of the swift hunters that would one day terrorize the Cretaceous, darted through the underbrush. Mammals, tiny but persistent, scurried in the darkness, biding their time. Even in the height of dinosaur dominance, the seeds of future upheaval were already planted. The Jurassic was their triumph, but it was not eternal. You walk across a Jurassic plain. Ahead of you, a Stegosaurus swings its tail, spikes glinting in the sun. To your left, a herd of Brachiosaurus moves slowly, necks swaying above the trees. To your right, an Allosaurus watches from the shadows, muscles coiled to strike. Where would you turn? Toward armor, toward giants, or toward the jaws of the hunter? This was the world of the Jurassic forests that trembled, plains that thundered, skies alive with wings. A time when dinosaurs reached their most spectacular forms, pushing size, shape, and strategy to limits that strain our imagination. But the suspense remains. How long could such a balance hold? Giants reshape the land, but the land reshapes giants. Predators rise, but prey adapts. Even in this golden age, the future pressed forward. For in the next chapter of the dinosaur kingdom, survival itself would be redefined. The defenders of the Cretaceous horns, shields, and herds were waiting in the wings. The Jurassic world was not static. It was a stage of movement and transformation, its players locked in an endless drama of survival. For every towering sauropod that fed upon the treetops, there was a predator waiting in the shadows, and for every predator that struck, there was a defense evolving in reply. Consider the herds. Fossil trackways frozen in ancient mud tell of sauropods moving not alone but together. Long parallel lines of footprints stretch for miles, some large, others much smaller, proof that the young traveled beside the old. This was not the life of a solitary giant, but of family groups, perhaps even migrating nations. Together they may have crossed plains in search of new forests, shaking the ground beneath them, turning every step into a rhythm of thunder. But questions rise. How could the earth support creatures so large, herds so vast? The answer may lie in constant movement. These giants could not linger too long in one place. They stripped vegetation quickly, forcing them to wander in cycles, always searching for fresh growth. And in this wandering, they became engineers of the land. Their dung fertilized soil, their trampling opened spaces for new plants, their feeding shaped entire ecosystems. Still, the twist remains. Even the strongest herds carried vulnerabilities. Young sauropods, barely the height of a human, were prey magnets. Evidence suggests predators like Allosaurus targeted them relentlessly, forcing adults to defend their calves with sweeping tails and trampling feet. A misstep meant loss. A successful defense meant survival of the next generation. The Jurassic, then, was not a tranquil paradise, but a battlefield of strategies. Size, speed, armor, and intelligence all vied for supremacy. Beyond the plains, forests sheltered other experiments of evolution. Small plant-eaters scurried on two legs, using speed to outpace danger. Early ornithopods, ancestors of the duck-billed dinosaurs, browsed in the undergrowth, feeding in groups that may have given them safety in numbers. Even in the shadow of giants, smaller forms thrived, filling niches left untouched by the titans. Above them, the skies were alive. Pterosaurs wheeled in the air, their wings casting fleeting shadows across the ground. Some skimmed rivers with long jaws to snatch fish. Others darted through the air chasing insects. They were a reminder that even in an age defined by size, agility had its place. Yet suspense lingers in the skies too. Among the branches, small feathered creatures stirred, not yet birds as we know them, but the forerunners. They glided, perhaps flapped weakly, experimenting with a future that would one day reshape the earth. The Jurassic may have belonged to giants, but the whispers of flight had already begun. Predators, of course, were never far behind. The fossils of Allosaurus reveal scars, breaks, and healing, evidence of violent lives. These hunters did not always win their battles unscathed. Tail spikes, trampling feet, and desperate prey left marks upon their bones. Yet they endured, their lineage spreading across continents, their dominance unchallenged for tens of millions of years. But nature never allows permanence. For even as Allosaurus reigned, smaller, faster hunters were sharpening their claws. Proto-raptors, lightly built, intelligent, equipped with sickle-shaped claws, darted through the undergrowth. They lacked the sheer power of their larger cousins, but they carried cunning, speed, and coordination. The seeds of the Cretaceous hunters were already sprouting in Jurassic soil. This is the suspense of deep time. What seems eternal is always temporary. The lion of today is the fossil of tomorrow. Even the land itself played a role in this unfolding drama. Pangaea, once united, began to split apart during the Jurassic. Great rift valleys opened, tearing continents into fragments. With each division, new coastlines formed, new climates appeared, new opportunities arose. Dinosaurs spread with the land, adapting to forests, plains, deserts, and coasts. Their kingdom was no longer a single stage but a world of countless arenas. Yet here lies the twist. This very splitting would also sow the seeds of their downfall. The more diverse their world became, the more vulnerable they would be to sudden catastrophe. But that is a story for later. Pause for a moment, and breathe in the image of the Jurassic world. Forests heavy with mist, where Brachiosaurus stretched its neck to pluck leaves higher than a giraffe could dream. Plains echoing with the calls of stegosaurs, their plates glowing red in the sun, their tails ready to strike, predators circling, testing, waiting for weakness. Skies streaked with the shadows of pterosaurs, rivers choked with ferns and cycads, their banks trampled by herds so vast they seemed unending. This was the height of dinosaur power. Not yet their end, not yet their decline, but their golden age. And still questions remain unanswered. Did sauropods sing to one another across long distances? Low rumbles carried through the ground like elephants today. Did their colors blaze in greens and browns, or in patterns lost to stone? Did Allosaurus hunt with stealth, or with bold, terrifying charges? The earth keeps its secrets well. Fossils whisper, but they do not shout. You are walking along the edge of a Jurassic forest. Ahead, the trees part, and a Diplodocus herd moves slowly across the plain, tails swaying like whips. Behind you, an Allosaurus growl rumbles from the shadows. Above, the beating wings of a pterosaur sweep the air. Would you follow the herd, confront the hunter, or watch the skies? Tell us below. The Jurassic giants were unmatched, but no age lasts forever. Even as they dominated, their world shifted. Continental drift, climate changes, and the rise of new species pressed against the balance they held. And when balance falters, new strategies emerge. The next chapter would not belong to size alone. It would belong to defense, to horns, armor, and herds that stood shoulder to shoulder against the predators. The defenders were coming. The Cretaceous dawned with change. Continents that had once been bound together continued to drift apart, carving oceans and seas between them. Climate zones multiplied. Where once there had been uniformity, now diversity flourished. New coastlines, new forests, new plains, each offered opportunities for evolution to explore, and evolution never wasted such chances. Dinosaurs adapted. Some grew larger, others grew stranger, and in this shifting world, a new kind of survival strategy rose to prominence: defense. If the Jurassic had belonged to the giants, the Cretaceous was the age of defenders, creatures that wore their survival on their skin, that turned their bodies into fortresses, that stood together in herds where safety was shared. The plains of North America, in particular, would come to echo with their footsteps. Here, the great horned and shielded dinosaurs, the ceratopsians, rose to dominance. Their skulls were nothing short of masterpieces of natural engineering. Triceratops, with its 3 horns and broad frill, remains the most iconic, but it was only one among many. Chasmosaurus, Styracosaurus, Centrosaurus, each bore variations of horns and frills, some long and forward curving, others short and stout, some decorated with spikes that turned their heads into living crowns. But what purpose did these horns and shields truly serve? At first glance, the answer seems obvious: defense against predators. And indeed, a charging Triceratops, horns lowered, was a force that even Tyrannosaurus would hesitate to face. One thrust could pierce bone, one shove could topple a predator. Their frills, meanwhile, may have shielded necks and shoulders from bites. Yet the twist lies in subtlety. Many frills were too thin to act as armor. Some horns were oriented in ways poorly suited for combat. Fossils show signs of punctures and healed wounds not only from predator attacks, but from combat between members of the same species. These were not merely weapons, they were signals. The Cretaceous defenders used their horns and frills to communicate, to challenge rivals, to attract mates. A frill edged with spikes may have intimidated not only predators but competitors. Horns could clash in battles for dominance, the sound of bone striking bone echoing across the plains. Survival was no longer about simply enduring, it was about thriving in a society of equals and rivals. Step onto those Cretaceous plains, and the sight would overwhelm. Herds of ceratopsians stretched to the horizon, moving in groups 100 strong. The ground quivered beneath their march. Their heads bobbed in unison, frills flashing in the sun like banners. Within the herd, calves clustered close to their mothers, their smaller horns still growing, their frills yet undeveloped. Safety lay in numbers, in the unity of many against the hunger of a few. But unity had its limits. At the edges of the herd, danger prowled. Tyrannosaurs, the apex predators of the late Cretaceous, waited for weakness. They tested the herd, searching for the young, the sick, the isolated. When they struck, it was with force and fury, their jaws clamping down with a bite stronger than any land predator in history. Against such power, even horns could fail. And yet ceratopsians endured. Their very existence, their sheer numbers, their persistence across continents, speaks to their success. For every predator's strike, there was a counter. For every loss, there was renewal. Herds did not fall easily, and predators knew it. The cost of a mistake could be death. Ceratopsians were not alone in their defenses. The Cretaceous also birthed creatures whose armor was built into their very flesh. The ankylosaurs, squat, heavily armored plant-eaters, moved like living tanks. Their backs were sheathed in bony plates, their sides bristled with spikes, their tails ended in massive clubs of fused bone. A predator that attacked an ankylosaur risked shattered limbs and crushed ribs. Fossils tell the story. Tyrannosaur bones have been found with deep dents that match the impact of an ankylosaur's tail. Imagine the force. A single swing capable of breaking bone, delivered by an animal no taller than a man's shoulder but armored beyond belief. Ankylosaurs did not need to flee, did not need to hide. They met danger with impenetrable defense. And yet, their design was not without cost. Heavy armor slowed them, making speed impossible. But survival is not a single strategy. Where ceratopsians found safety in numbers, ankylosaurs found it in solitude, in the certainty that no predator would dare risk a fatal blow. Between them, these defenders reshaped the dynamics of survival. No longer was dominance defined by size alone. It was defined by cooperation, by armor, by strategies that balanced defense with defense. The Cretaceous was a chessboard, each move countered by another, each adaptation answered in kind. Still, suspense lingers. If defenses were so formidable, how did predators survive? The answer lies in patience and precision. Tyrannosaurs did not need to take on the strongest. They needed only the weakest, the stragglers, the young. Nature does not reward reckless bravery, it rewards efficiency. Predators evolved sharper senses, keener eyes, and strategies honed to find the gaps in the defenders' lines. The balance held precarious, constant, unyielding, but the twist is deeper still. For these horns and shields, these clubs and plates, did not only guard against predators, they were part of a greater story, the story of display, of communication, of life beyond the hunt. Herds may have used their frills to signal across distances. Patterns of color may have blazed across their shields, bright against the green of the plains. Ankylosaurs may have stood as living symbols of strength, their armor as much warning as weapon. And so the Cretaceous became a spectacle not only of survival, but of display. Nature had armed its creatures, but it had also decorated them. Picture yourself in the middle of a ceratopsian herd. Frills rise all around you, horns glinting in the sunlight, the sound of low calls rumbling like distant thunder. At the edge of the herd, a tyrannosaur prowls, its eyes fixed on the calves. Would you stand firm with the herd, lower your horns and charge, or scatter and flee? Tell us below. The defenders of the Cretaceous were more than prey. They were living walls, communities forged by necessity, armored symbols of resilience. Together they turned survival into art, defense into spectacle. But defense, no matter how strong, was never absolute. For just as the defenders grew stronger, so too did the hunters that stalked them. And in that clash, the story of the Cretaceous reached new heights of drama. The Cretaceous plains were not quiet. They pulsed with tension, a constant test of wills between predator and prey. Herds of ceratopsians grazed across open fields, their frills flashing as they raised and lowered their massive heads. Ankylosaurs lumbered through the underbrush, armored shells brushing against ferns. Edmontosaurs and other hadrosaurs fed in groups, their crests resonating with low calls that rolled across the land like music. But always beyond the horizon, danger waited. Predators did not charge blindly into such defenses. They watched. They waited. Tyrannosaurs followed herds for days, circling, testing, probing. They looked for the limp in a leg, the calf that lagged behind, the moment when chaos might fracture unity. Patience was their weapon, and when the moment came, they struck like storms. Imagine the scene. A triceratops herd drinks from a riverbank. Suddenly waterbirds take flight, alarmed. The air shifts. From the tree line emerges a tyrannosaur, jaws glinting with teeth longer than daggers. The herd surges into motion. Mothers push calves to the center, horns lowering in unison, forming a wall of bone. Dust rises, frills shimmer. The predator halts. It tests the line, stepping closer, muscles rippling. For long seconds, nothing moves but the dust between them. Then, in a burst, it lunges, not at the wall, but at the flank. The herd wheels, horns thrust forward. A clash of titans unfolds in seconds. One predator, one wall of defenders, each risking all in the balance of survival. Fossils record this eternal struggle. Wounds gouged in tyrannosaur bones match the horns of triceratops. Triceratops skulls bear punctures from tyrannosaur teeth. Each side scarred the other. Each left the land littered with stories written in bone. And yet predators were not always victorious, nor were the defenders invincible. Nature allowed no permanent advantage. When herds held firm, predators fell back, starving or moving to easier prey. When fear broke unity, calves were taken, herds fractured. Every day was a negotiation written in muscle, blood, and instinct. Other defenders joined this Cretaceous theater. The pachycephalosaurs, dome-headed dinosaurs, roamed in small groups. Their skulls were thickened into great bony domes, some nearly 10 inches thick. Fossils show lesions and scars, proof that they used these heads as battering rams. Were they defense against predators, or duels for dominance within the herd? Perhaps both. When predators struck, a wall of charging, head-butting defenders could have been chaos enough to save the young. Hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, lacked horns, clubs, or armor. Their defense was speed, herding, and sound. Their hollow crests may have amplified resonant calls, warning the herd of danger, coordinating flight. In their unity, in their numbers, they found protection as strong as any frill or spike. So the suspense sharpens. Defense came in many forms, but none were absolute. Every shield had a crack. Every fortress could be broken. Survival was not guaranteed. And still, the defenders did not only battle predators, they battled one another. Fossils reveal Triceratops skulls punctured not just by predators but by their own kind. Horns clashed in ritual combat, contests of strength that may have determined dominance, mating rights, or leadership within herds. The Cretaceous plains were alive not just with the thunder of survival, but with the spectacle of rivalry. Picture two Triceratops locking horns, muscles straining, dirt kicked up beneath their hooves. Frills push against frills, horns scrape across shields. The sound is immense, a clash of living armor. The loser staggers back, wounded but alive. The herd watches, balance restored. For these creatures, defense was as much about display as it was about survival, and so the Cretaceous plains were not only dangerous, but alive with drama. Predators circling, defenders standing firm, rivals clashing, herds moving like nations across a vast and ever-shifting stage. But suspense deepens when we look to the future. For as formidable as these defenders were, their time was not infinite. The strategies they perfected, horns, shields, armor, herds, held for millions of years, but nature, relentless, continued to press forward. New predators, new climates, new challenges waited. Even the strongest defenses would one day face enemies they could not deflect. Already, the earth itself was stirring with change. The continents drifted farther apart. New seas split North America, creating isolated environments where evolution experimented with unique forms. In some places, predators grew larger and stronger. In others, defenders adapted with new horns, new frills, new weapons. The arms race never stopped, but every race must eventually end. The defenders stood tall, their herds vast, their weapons gleaming in the Cretaceous sun. But beyond the horizon, another kind of storm gathered. Not claws, not teeth, not horns, something greater, something no shield could turn aside. You walk at the edge of a Cretaceous herd. A young Triceratops stumbles, lagging behind. From the tree line, the shadow of a tyrannosaur emerges, silent and deliberate. Do you rush forward to defend the calf, stand with the wall of horns, or run with the herd? Tell us below. The defenders of the Cretaceous stood as monuments to survival. Horns that pierced predators, shields that flashed like banners, clubs that shattered bone, herds that moved like nations. They were the guardians of their world, the proof that defense can shape an age as surely as offense. But every guardian faces a challenger, every fortress faces a siege, and the greatest hunters of the Cretaceous were not content to circle forever. They adapted, they sharpened, they learned how to strike past horn and shield, how to challenge even the strongest. The defenders had their age, but the hunters were waiting. The Cretaceous defenders were masters of endurance. Their strategies had been perfected over millions of years, written into bone and muscle, passed through generations that lived and died on open plains. They stood together against predators, against rivals, against the shifting world itself. Yet in the endless arms race of life, no advantage lasts forever. Predators grew sharper, their senses honed, their patience deepened. Tyrannosaurs developed binocular vision, their eyes facing forward to lock on prey with precision. Their legs carried them not just with power, but with bursts of surprising speed. Their jaws, already among the most fearsome in nature, became weapons of unmatched force. Horns could wound them, shields could deflect them, but when those jaws closed, bone itself shattered. And so the balance between defenders and hunters became a knife edge. Neither side could claim total victory. Fossil evidence bears witness. Triceratops skulls punctured with tyrannosaur teeth, proof of violent kills. Tyrannosaur bones gouged by horn thrusts, proof of desperate defenses that struck back. The land was littered with survivors and casualties alike, each a testament to the ferocity of the struggle. But survival was not only about power. It was about numbers, about strategy, about chance. Sometimes a herd held firm and sent the predator limping away. Sometimes the predator triumphed, dragging down a calf as the herd thundered into the distance. Every encounter was different, every outcome written in dust, blood, and bone. Beyond the great battles of horns and teeth, the defenders shaped their world in quieter ways. Their migrations spread seeds across vast plains, their grazing carved patterns into landscapes, their dung fertilized forests that would one day regrow to feed their descendants. They were not merely survivors of the Cretaceous, they were its architects. Yet nature does not reward permanence. Even the architects of an age cannot outlast the forces that shape the planet itself. The seas that split the continents continued to widen. Climates shifted, forcing herds into new migrations, testing defenses against unfamiliar predators. Isolation birthed strange new forms, ceratopsians, with elaborate frills spiked like crowns, ankylosaurs with armor so heavy they seemed impossible, hadrosaurs with crests shaped like trumpets. Evolution responded to every challenge with invention, and the defenders remained central to the stage. Still, suspense deepens. For all their brilliance, all their spectacle, all their unity, the defenders lived in the shadow of hunters growing more formidable with every generation. Every time a horn clashed against a jaw, the outcome was uncertain. Every victory carried the seed of future defeat. And in the shadows of the Cretaceous, a new breed of hunters sharpened their claws. Step into that moment of tension. The sun sets over the Cretaceous plains. A herd of Triceratops settles for the night. Calves clustered in the center, adults forming a circle of horns. Dust hangs in the still air. Silence falls. But from beyond the tree line comes the faint rustle of leaves, the flash of movement, eyes glinting in the half-light. Predators gather, watching, waiting, muscles taut. The defenders lower their horns, ready to meet the charge. The earth holds its breath. Who will prevail? Horn or tooth? Shield or jaw? The answer waits in the darkness. You are caught in this standoff. The herd presses close, their horns lowering in a wall of bone. Across the clearing, tyrannosaurs edge forward, their eyes fixed on the young. Would you hold the line with the defenders, or slip into the shadows with the hunters? Tell us below. The defenders defined the Cretaceous with resilience, unity, and spectacle. Their horns pierced predators, their shields flashed like banners, their armor crushed bones. They were the guardians of their age, monuments of survival in a dangerous world. But no defense is absolute, no wall is unbreakable, and as the Cretaceous pressed on, predators refined their craft. They learned patience, they learned precision, they learned how to break even the strongest defenses. The hunters were ready. The ground shakes with the approach of predators. Shadows circle the herd, horns lower, jaws open. The defenders brace themselves, their future balanced on the clash to come. The hunters strike next. The defenders of the Cretaceous stood in herds and armored lines, but even the strongest walls exist to be tested, and test them the hunters did. This was the age of the great carnivores, predators whose names echo through time: Tyrannosaurus, Giganotosaurus, Spinosaurus, each one a masterpiece of design, each one a blade sharpened by millions of years of evolution. They were not just killers, they were survivors, strategists, rulers in their own right. The tyrannosaurs above all embodied power, with skulls as long as a man is tall, and jaws filled with teeth thick as railroad spikes. Their bite force remains unmatched among land animals. When those jaws closed, bone shattered, flesh tore, and prey collapsed beneath overwhelming violence. They were not sleek ambushers, they were executioners. But questions linger. How did these predators hunt? Were they solitary kings, stalking alone, or did they gather in loose groups, their power magnified by cooperation? Evidence paints a picture both chilling and fascinating. Trackways reveal tyrannosaurs moving side by side, Fossil sites show multiple individuals together, perhaps feeding, perhaps hunting as a unit. If true, then their strength was not just in size but in strategy. Still, the twist is sobering. Cooperation brings rewards, but also risk. Competition between predators was fierce. Cannibalism was not unknown. The line between ally and rival could blur in the hunger of the hunt. Survival demanded both ferocity and cunning. Beyond the tyrannosaurs, the Cretaceous introduced hunters of other designs. In South America, Giganotosaurus roamed, a predator even longer than Tyrannosaurus, though more lightly built. Its teeth were thinner, better suited to slicing than crushing. It may have hunted massive sauropods, its speed and blade-like jaws turning the tables on giants once thought untouchable. In North Africa, the rivers belonged to Spinosaurus, one of the strangest hunters ever to live. Longer than both Tyrannosaurus and Giganotosaurus, with a sail rising from its back and jaws like a crocodile's, it was a predator of water as much as land. Fossil evidence reveals dense bones that aided in diving, and conical teeth perfect for seizing fish. Spinosaurus reminds us that apex predator did not always mean land-bound hunter. It meant mastery of a domain, whether plain, forest, or river. Each of these predators, different in form and strategy, carried the same truth. Dominance is never singular. There was no single king. Each continent produced rulers, shaped by its own environments, each adapted to the challenges of its stage. But not all Cretaceous hunters were giants. In the shadows of forests and along the edges of herds, smaller predators tested different strategies. The raptors, Velociraptor, Deinonychus, Utahraptor, brought intelligence and cooperation into sharper focus. Though small compared to tyrannosaurs, they carried deadly sickle-shaped claws, used not for slashing wildly, but for precision strikes. Their agility was unmatched, their eyes sharp, their minds quick. Did they hunt in coordinated packs? The evidence is debated, but fossils show raptors alongside large prey too dangerous, perhaps, for a lone hunter. The possibility of group hunting paints a chilling picture. Coordinated attacks, communication, strategy. They were not the blunt force of a tyrannosaur, but the scalpel to its hammer. And here lies the twist. Raptors may not have been the most terrifying because of their claws, but because of their minds. Intelligence is the sharpest weapon of all. The clash between hunters and defenders defined the Cretaceous. Horns met teeth, armor clashed with jaws, speed countered ambush. The battlefield was the plains, the forests, the rivers. Every encounter rewrote the balance of survival. Yet the suspense deepens when we ask, what made these predators so enduring? The answer lies not just in anatomy, but in adaptability. Tyrannosaurs grew larger, their senses keener, their bite stronger. Raptors grew smarter, their movements swifter. Spinosaurus conquered the rivers. Each predator found a niche and exploited it with ruthless efficiency. Still, no strategy was without flaw. Tyrannosaurs were powerful, but slow to mature, relying on long lifespans. Giganotosaurus was swift but fragile in its bones. Raptors were intelligent but small and vulnerable. Each predator walked a line between dominance and downfall, and in that tension, life thrived. Step into the night of the Cretaceous. The moon glows pale across the plain. A herd of hadrosaurs huddles together, their hollow crests sounding low alarms. In the tall grass, shadows shift. A pack of raptors stalks, their eyes gleaming. They dart forward, not to strike immediately, but to drive the herd into chaos. Panic is their ally. As the herd scatters, one young straggler breaks away. In an instant, claws strike, teeth sink, and the night is filled with the sound of survival's cruel arithmetic. Elsewhere, in the stillness of a riverbank, ripples spread. A Spinosaurus waits beneath the water, its sail breaking the surface like the fin of some monstrous fish. A group of crocodile-like relatives sun themselves on the shore, but none dare approach too close. When Spinosaurus surges upward, water explodes, prey vanishes beneath its jaws. Even in the water, hunters ruled. You find yourself in the late Cretaceous. To your left, a tyrannosaur prowls the edge of a ceratopsian herd. To your right, a pack of raptors circles hadrosaurs in the grass. Ahead, the river stirs with the shadow of Spinosaurus. Which path would you take? Stand before the tyrant, follow the pack, or risk the river? Share your choice. The hunters of the Cretaceous remind us that power comes in many forms: strength, speed, intelligence, adaptability. Each predator carried its own weapon, its own advantage, its own flaw. None were invincible, none eternal, but suspense sharpens again. Predators always push prey to evolve, but prey, in turn, sharpens the predator. This arms race never ends, until something larger than both disrupts the game, and in the shadows of the Cretaceous, that disruption was closer than any predator could sense. The Cretaceous world was a stage of contests, and none were more dramatic than those between predator and prey. Every herd crossing, every riverbank gathering, every night's silence carried within it the possibility of violence, and the hunters were always listening. Raptors, though small compared to tyrannosaurs or spinosauриds, embodied a different kind of dominance. Their very bodies were designed for precision. The sickle claw on each foot curved like a blade, sharp enough to puncture flesh with terrifying efficiency. Their tails, stiffened with rods of bone, gave them balance as they leapt and twisted. Their eyes, forward-facing, read the movements of prey with calculating intelligence. And here lies the suspense. Intelligence changes the hunt. Unlike blunt force, intelligence adapts. It observes, tests, refines. Fossil evidence of multiple raptors surrounding larger prey hints at something chilling: cooperation. Imagine a herd of hadrosaurs grazing, unaware. Raptors press from one side, causing panic. Others wait at the edges, ready to strike the scattered. It is a strategy not of chance, but of plan. If true, the Cretaceous was not only the age of strength, but the dawn of cunning. Still, intelligence carried its own risks. Cooperation required tolerance. A kill shared among many left each with less. Hunger gnawed at alliances, and when prey was scarce, allies could become rivals, even meals. Cannibalism, once thought rare, is written into fossil bone. Survival blurred the lines between pack and competition. The tyrannosaurs, meanwhile, embodied raw power. Their very presence altered the balance of the plains. Imagine being a smaller predator, a dromaeosaur, a troodontid, even a young tyrannosaur, and sensing the approach of an adult. The ground vibrates beneath its weight. Its shadow covers yours. Whatever kill you've made, you abandon it. Tyrannosaurs were not only hunters, they were thieves, dominating through intimidation as much as through strength. Yet even among the tyrants, competition raged. Evidence suggests tyrannosaurs fought one another, their massive jaws leaving scars that healed over time. Some skulls bear punctures that could only have been made by teeth of their own kind. Whether fighting for territory, for mates, or for kills, the kings challenged one another constantly. And here lies the twist. Being the apex predator did not guarantee safety. Many tyrannosaur skeletons reveal injuries, broken bones, infections, bites. Even kings limped, starved, or died in the struggle of life. Nature crowned no ruler permanently. Spinosaurus, far across the sea, added another layer of complexity to the predator's world. Its dominance was not on the open plains but in the rivers and deltas. There it reigned over fish, crocodile-like reptiles, even smaller dinosaurs that strayed too close to the water's edge. The sail upon its back rose like a banner, perhaps for display, perhaps for thermoregulation, perhaps both. Its design was alien, a reminder that evolution writes in many scripts. Yet even Spinosaurus faced risks. Its long, narrow jaws, perfect for fish, were less suited for crushing heavy bone. On land, it may have been awkward compared to the giants of other continents. Its dominance was real, but limited to its chosen realm. Every predator carried strengths. Every predator carried weaknesses, and in that balance lay the survival of the age. Consider the strategies at play. Some hunters relied on ambush. A raptor, hidden in the grass, waiting for the moment prey strayed too close. Others relied on pursuit, chasing with endurance until prey collapsed from exhaustion. Tyrannosaurs relied on overwhelming force, jaws closing with finality. Spinosaurids struck with surprise from water's edge. Each method worked, until it didn't. Each prey species answered with defenses, herds, horns, armor, speed. The suspense here is eternal. Did predators ever truly win, or was the balance always in motion? Fossils suggest that even the most fearsome hunters rarely enjoyed easy kills. A tyrannosaur may have waited weeks for the right opportunity. Raptors may have gone hungry for days when herds held tight. Victory was rare, but it was enough to survive, to reproduce, to pass on the sharpened tools of the hunt. And yet within this brutal cycle lay moments of quiet. A tyrannosaur sleeping in the shade, belly full after a kill, a pack of raptors resting near one another, grooming feathers. Even the fiercest predators lived more in stillness than in violence. Their lives, like ours, were mostly waiting, watching, enduring. The hunt was only the flash, the brief fire of existence. Still, that flash is what carved their legend. You walk across a late Cretaceous plain. In the grass a raptor crouches, its claw flexing. Farther on, a tyrannosaur steps into view, massive jaws opening with a bellow. And beyond, a Spinosaurus breaks the water's surface, its sail gleaming red in the sun. If you had to face one, which would you choose? The claw, the jaw, or the river's shadow? What would you do? The hunters of the Cretaceous ruled by tooth, claw, and cunning. They tested the defenses of the age, forced prey into herds, pushed evolution into arms races that reshaped entire species. They were not mindless killers, but parts of a system older and more intricate than we can grasp. But as fearsome as they were also vulnerable to forces beyond their control. Climate shifts, droughts, the opening and closing of seas, these shaped their fates as surely as any battle. They could adapt, yes, but even adaptation has limits. And here, the foreshadowing sharpens. For while we marvel at the jaws of Tyrannosaurus, the claws of raptors, the sail of Spinosaurus, another truth awaits. Their stories were not discovered in the moment, but millions of years later, when bones long buried came back into the light. The hunters lived their lives, but we only know them because humans unearthed their shadows. And the story of those discoveries, the rivalries, the mistakes, the revelations, is a drama of its own. The Cretaceous predators fought for survival. But in the centuries ahead, paleontologists would fight for their legacy. The raptors leap, the tyrannosaur strikes, the spinosaur crashes through water. The Cretaceous roars with the power of its hunters. And then, silence. Bone sinks into soil. Millions of years pass. When those bones emerge again, they will spark battles of a different kind, battles of science, pride, and discovery. The Cretaceous hunters roared, the defenders stood firm, the earth itself shifted, then time swallowed them all. Millions of years passed, forests became coal, seas turned to stone, bones sank beneath mud and ash, pressed by the weight of ages until they hardened into fossils. And so silence returned. For 65 million years, the world forgot its former rulers. The ground beneath our feet became their tomb. Their stories lay hidden, waiting for hands to unearth them. When those hands finally came, they were not claws or talons, but human, and the battles that followed were not fought with horns and teeth, but with pride, ambition, and science. The first whispers of dinosaurs emerged not as thunderous skeletons, but as fragments. In 1677, an English naturalist described a strange piece of bone dug from a quarry. It was massive, alien, and he guessed it might have belonged to a giant man. He was wrong. but he had glimpsed the shadow of something far greater. A century later, more bones emerged, enormous teeth, spines and vertebrae, too large for any known animal. Scholars puzzled, compared, debated, and then, in the early 19th century, the word was born: Dinosauria, terrible lizards. It was a name that would capture the imagination of the world. But with discovery came rivalry. The most infamous chapter of paleontology's early history is known as the Bone Wars. In the late 1800s, two men, Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh, raced to uncover as many fossils as possible. What began as professional competition spiraled into obsession. They bribed workers. They sabotaged sites. They destroyed bones rather than let the other claim them. Camps of diggers faced off in the dust of the American West. Battles fought not with bullets, but with shovels and dynamite. Skeletons were unearthed and shattered. Names given and revoked. Reputations made and ruined. Yet out of this chaos came astonishing results. Between them, Marsh and Cope named over 130 species of dinosaurs. Some were mistakes, hastily described, later corrected. Others remain with us. Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Allosaurus. The rivalry was brutal, reckless, and often shameful, but it gave the world dinosaurs as a reality, not a myth. And here lies the twist. From destruction, creation. From rivalry, revelation. Even the ugliest battles of pride advanced the science of life's past. Beyond the Bone Wars, the search for fossils spread worldwide. In the deserts of Mongolia, explorers uncovered the first velociraptor. In the Badlands of Alberta, entire bone beds revealed herds of ceratopsians preserved together. In South America, giants like Argentinosaurus emerged, rewriting the limits of size. Each discovery expanded the kingdom, each fossil another page in the book of deep time. But suspense deepens when we consider how often the story changed. Dinosaurs were once pictured as sluggish reptiles, tail-dragging, dim-witted, doomed to extinction. Museums displayed them as lumbering beasts, more curiosities than living animals. It was a view that lasted for decades. Then came the revolution. In the 1960s and 70s, paleontologists began to challenge the old picture. Fossils revealed growth rates too fast for cold-blooded reptiles. Trackways showed active, dynamic movement. Skeletons displayed adaptations for speed, endurance, and even social behavior. And then, the greatest revelation: feathers. Feathered dinosaurs, preserved in the fine stone of China's Liaoning province, transformed everything. Suddenly the line between bird and dinosaur blurred until it vanished. Raptors carried feathers. Some early dinosaurs may have been cloaked in down. The kingdom of dinosaurs was not entirely extinct. It lived on in every sparrow, hawk, and eagle. From tail-dragging reptiles to vibrant, feathered, dynamic creatures, the image of dinosaurs was reborn. Still, suspense lingers. What mysteries remain? Could some dinosaurs have sung, their voices echoing like birdsong? Did their colors blaze in iridescent blues and reds, hidden forever in stone? How much intelligence did raptors truly wield? Science answers, but never fully. Each fossil whispers part of the story, but the chorus is incomplete. For every discovery, 1,000 questions remain. You stand in a dusty canyon as fossil hunters chip away at stone. Before them lies a half-buried skull, massive jaws locked in a silent roar. If you uncovered this fossil, would you keep it for yourself, share it with the world, or study it in secret? Where would your choice lead? The story of dinosaurs is not only their own, it is also ours. How we see them has always reflected how we see ourselves. At first we imagined them as monsters, reminders of a brutal past, then as sluggish failures, cautionary tales of extinction. Now we see them as dynamic, successful, vibrant, rulers of Earth for millions of years. The science of dinosaurs continues to evolve, but the drama of discovery, The rivalries, the mistakes, the triumphs, is as human as the bones we unearth. Yet suspense sharpens again. For all we have learned, one question looms larger than all the rest. If dinosaurs were so successful, if they reigned for so long, then why did they vanish? The answer lies in the twilight of their kingdom. The story of dinosaurs was once told in bones alone. Now it is written in light, in chemistry, in the finest details hidden within stone. The modern age of paleontology has transformed what we know and what we dare to imagine. After the bone wars faded, a new era began. Scientists worked carefully, piecing together skeletons with patience rather than haste, revisiting old mistakes, refining old names. Whole skeletons were mounted in museums, their immense forms towering over generations of visitors. Children gazed upward at the long necks of sauropods and the horns of triceratops, and in that awe a new generation of scientists was born. But science never stands still. By the late 20th century, the dinosaur renaissance had begun. Paleontologists such as John Ostrom and Robert Bakker argued that dinosaurs were not sluggish reptiles, but active, warm-blooded, dynamic creatures. They pointed to Deinonychus, a raptor with powerful legs, grasping claws, and balance that spoke of speed and agility. This was no lumbering brute. This was a predator alive with energy. The idea spread like wildfire. Dinosaurs were reimagined not as failures, but as one of evolution's greatest successes. Their reign had lasted far longer than humanity's entire history. They adapted, diversified, and thrived in nearly every environment. They were not cold relics of the past, they were models of survival. And then came the discoveries that forever blurred the line between dinosaur and bird. In the fine-grained stone of Liaoning, China, fossils emerged that defied belief. Raptors with feathers, tiny dinosaurs with wings, some capable of gliding, others perhaps even of powered flight. Impressions of plumage so delicate, they captured the very barbs of feathers. The revelation was staggering. Birds were not distant relatives of dinosaurs, they were dinosaurs. What had once been imagined as scaly monsters were now pictured as vibrant, feathered creatures. Some may have displayed brilliant colors. Microscopic analysis of fossil feathers revealed preserved pigments, hinting at iridescent blues, fiery reds, and shimmering greens. Dinosaurs were not just beasts, they were alive with light and color. Still, suspense lingers. What did these colors mean? Were they for camouflage, for courtship, for display? Did a velociraptor's feathers glint under the sun, or were they muted, blending into the brush? The answers remain hidden, waiting for future discoveries. Technology, too, reshaped our understanding. CT scans revealed the inner structures of skulls, showing the size of brain cavities, the shapes of inner ears, the pathways of nerves. We could peer into the senses of creatures long dead. Tyrannosaurs, it turns out, had acute vision and extraordinary smell, making them formidable hunters. Raptors had balance and coordination that spoke of agility. Even sauropods' immense necks could be reconstructed, showing how they moved, grazed, and interacted with their world. Chemical analysis uncovered diets, growth rates, even diseases. Some fossils revealed traces of soft tissue, remnants of proteins that whispered of blood vessels and muscles. The line between past and present blurred further with every revelation. And yet, each answer only deepened the questions. Beyond science, the romance of discovery never faded. Fossil hunters still trek into deserts, badlands, and mountains. They endure blistering heat, freezing nights, dust storms, and isolation, all for the chance to uncover a bone that has not seen daylight in millions of years. Each fossil is not just a specimen, but a story, a life once lived, a death once endured, a moment frozen in stone. In Argentina, the remains of Argentinosaurus stretched the limits of size, reminding us that giants once walked the earth. In Utah, new raptors emerged, larger and deadlier than their kin. In Madagascar, Strange forms like Majungasaurus revealed predators with behaviors unlike any other. Each continent told its own chapter, each fossil another line in the story. The kingdom of dinosaurs was global, and so too was its rediscovery. But science is not without rivalry even today. Paleontologists compete for sites, for grants, for the right to name new species. Controversies rage over classification, over whether certain fossils represent new species or simply growth stages of known ones. Did Nanotyrannus exist as a separate species, or is it only a young Tyrannosaurus? The debate continues, evidence weighed against evidence, each side fighting for the truth. And here lies the twist. Discovery is never final. Every fossil is a question, and every answer is provisional. Science is not a monument but a dialogue across generations. The public, too, plays its part. Movies, books, documentaries, they bring dinosaurs to life in the minds of millions. But they also shape expectations, sometimes straying far from truth. The raptors of cinema are larger than their real counterparts. The roars that echo on screen are inventions, for no fossil can tell us exactly how a dinosaur's voice once sounded. And yet in these dramatizations lies a spark that draws new eyes, new curiosity, new scientists to the field. Dinosaurs, in the end, live not only in stone but in imagination. You stand in a modern museum. To your left, a towering Tyrannosaurus skeleton looms, jaws frozen in eternal strike. To your right, a delicate feathered dinosaur is displayed, its wings spread in silent flight. Which would capture your imagination more, the terrifying predator of legend, or the feathered link to living birds? Where would your wonder take you? The science of dinosaurs has never been static. From fragments mistaken for giants to full skeletons mounted in holes, from dim-witted monsters to vibrant survivors, from reptiles to birds, each generation has remade them in its image. But even as we learn more, one question overshadows all, a question that has haunted scientists for over a century. If dinosaurs were so successful, so diverse, so perfectly adapted to their world, why did they fall? The answer lies in catastrophe, a twilight that swept across the earth, ending an empire in fire and darkness. The hunters thrived, the defenders endured. Science uncovered their bones and restored their stories, but none of it explains their end. To understand the fall of the kingdom, we must step into the last day of the dinosaurs and the long twilight that followed. For more than 160 million years, dinosaurs reigned. They endured shifting continents, volcanic upheavals, changing climates. They adapted, diversified, and thrived. By the late Cretaceous, they occupied every corner of the earth. Giants walked the plains, hunters stalked the forests, winged pterosaurs ruled the skies, and seas teemed with reptiles that rivaled whales in size. It was a world vibrant, alive, and powerful. And then, it ended. The question is simple, almost childlike. What killed the dinosaurs? But the answer is layered in mystery, written not in a single event but in a cascade of catastrophe. The most famous explanation begins in the heavens. 66 million years ago, a rock hurtled through space, 6 miles wide, traveling faster than a bullet. Its target, the Yucatan Peninsula of modern-day Mexico. When it struck, the Earth convulsed. The impact released energy greater than 1 billion nuclear bombs. Mountains melted. Forests ignited in a wave of fire that swept continents. The seas rose in walls that flattened coasts. Within moments, life in the immediate blast zone was annihilated. But the greater horror came after. Dust and vapor surged into the atmosphere, cloaking the earth in shadow. Sunlight dimmed, photosynthesis faltered, plants withered, food chains collapsed, first on land, then in the seas. The age of abundance gave way to starvation, and yet even this is only part of the story. For the earth was already restless. In India, The Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic systems in history, erupted with fury. Lava spilled across vast regions, layer upon layer of molten rock. Gases filled the air, sulfur and carbon altering climate. Some scientists argue that dinosaurs were already under stress from these upheavals when the asteroid struck. So which killed them? Fire from the sky, or fire from the earth? Perhaps both. Perhaps it was not one blow but two. The suspense deepens when we consider the survivors. Crocodiles lived on. Birds, small feathered dinosaurs, endured. Mammals, though small, persisted. Why them, and not the giants? The answer may lie in scale. Smaller animals needed less food, could hide in burrows or water, could eat a wider range of food. Dinosaurs, for all their brilliance, were tied to size, to abundance, to ecosystems that collapsed under catastrophe. Their very success became their vulnerability. Still, fossils tell us the end was not instant. Some dinosaurs lingered in isolated pockets for thousands of years after the impact. But the great dynasties, Triceratops, Tyrannosaurus, Hadrosaurs, faded into silence. The thunder stopped. Step into that twilight. The air is thick with ash. The sun glows dim, a pale ghost behind curtains of dust. Forests lie blackened. Rivers choke with carcasses. The cries of survivors echo through silence. A Triceratops herd stumbles across a burned plain, calves weak, mothers gaunt. A tyrannosaur prowls the edge, but even its strength falters in a world without food. Raptors, once agile and cunning, grow thin, their eyes hollow with hunger. Each step is slower, each breath harder. In the oceans, the great mosasaurs drift. Their prey vanished. On the coasts, pterosaurs fall from the skies, wings too weak to lift. One by one, the rulers of the age collapse. And in their place, shadows stir. Mammals, small and persistent, moving quietly through the wreckage of giants. The kingdom of dinosaurs crumbles. And yet, suspense lingers. Was it truly the end? Or merely a transformation? For while the great forms vanished, one lineage remained, feathered, winged, fragile, yet enduring. Birds carried the legacy forward, an echo of thunder in every beat of their wings. So perhaps the dinosaurs did not die. Perhaps they live on, in every robin, every eagle, every sparrow, survivors of a kingdom that once shook the earth. You stand in the shadow of catastrophe. Ash falls from the sky. To your left, a Triceratops herd struggles forward, their calves too weak to rise. To your right, a tyrannosaur stares at the horizon, ribs visible beneath its skin. Overhead, a small feathered bird takes flight into the darkness. Whose path would you follow? The doomed giant, the fading hunter, or the fragile survivor? What choice would you make? The extinction of the dinosaurs is the greatest drama in Earth's history. It reminds us that no dominance is permanent, no reign eternal. Even rulers that lasted for millions of years can vanish in the span of days. But extinction is not only an ending, it is also a beginning. In the ashes of the Mesozoic, new lineages rose, mammals spread, diversified, grew larger. The age of reptiles gave way to the age of mammals, and eventually to us. Yet even as we live in their aftermath, the story of dinosaurs continues to echo. Fossils remind us of their power, their beauty, their fragility. Each discovery pulls them closer, makes them live again, if only in imagination. The twilight of their reign was real, but so is their legacy. Extinction is not a single moment. It is a chain reaction, a slow unraveling where every thread pulled weakens the whole. When the asteroid struck, it was not only dinosaurs that fell, it was the world they depended on. The first to suffer were the plants. With sunlight blocked, photosynthesis slowed, then ceased. Leaves shriveled, seeds lay dormant. Forests thinned into ghostly silhouettes. For herbivores, this was devastation. Creatures that once grazed endlessly found nothing. Herds broke apart. Weakness spread through populations like a sickness, and when the plant-eaters faltered, the carnivores followed. Predators that once prowled with confidence found their prey gaunt, dying, or already gone. Tyrannosaurs may have scavenged the carcasses that littered the plains, but even they could not survive on famine alone. Raptors, agile and clever, could adapt for a time, but intelligence cannot create food where none exists. The seas, too, bore scars. Dust and ash cooled the earth, disrupting currents and plunging temperatures. Plankton, the foundation of ocean life, collapsed in numbers. From plankton to fish, from fish to mosasaurs, the chain of survival snapped link by link. Creatures that had reigned in the deep for millions of years drifted into silence. This is the true nature of mass extinction, not one death, but the collapse of a system too vast to repair. And yet, amidst the ruin, life endured. Crocodiles slipped into rivers, waiting out famine with patience. Turtles buried themselves in mud, emerging when conditions improved. Mammals, small and nocturnal, fed on seeds, insects, roots, resources too humble to attract giants, but enough to sustain the small. Birds, their bodies light and efficient, adapted to seeds and insects as well. Why them, and not the great dinosaurs? Scale was part of the answer. Large bodies require large appetites. Small bodies demand less. Diversity was another. Species that could eat anything, hide anywhere, move swiftly. They had options. The giants did not. And so, as the Cretaceous gave way to the Paleogene, the world emptied of its rulers. Where once Triceratops herds thundered, silence spread. Where once Tyrannosaurus roared, only wind moved across the plains. The shadows of sauropods no longer fell across forests. The skies, once filled with pterosaurs, were still. It was the twilight of the kingdom. But endings are never complete. For each extinction, new beginnings unfold. Mammals, released from the shadow of dinosaurs, diversified. Some grew larger, filling niches left empty. Primates arose. Whales returned to the sea. Eventually, humans walked the earth. And here lies the twist. Without the asteroid, without extinction, there may never have been us. Dinosaurs might have continued their reign, evolving in ways we cannot imagine. The age of mammals might never have dawned. Extinction, brutal and merciless, cleared the stage. And in that emptiness, new stories began. Still, the legacy of dinosaurs never vanished. Every bird that takes flight carries their bloodline. Every fossil uncovered rekindles their thunder. Even now, millions of years after their twilight, they shape our imagination, our science, our sense of time itself. The earth remembers, and so do we. The ash still falls, the giants fade, but in the silence, a small mammal scurries, and a bird takes wing. If you could choose to live in this world as a survivor struggling in the shadows, or as a giant destined to vanish, which path would you take? Where would you place yourself in the twilight? Mass extinction is a reminder of fragility. Not even the rulers of Earth are immune. Not even the strongest, the fiercest, the most enduring can resist catastrophe forever. And yet, it is also a reminder of resilience. Life endures. Life adapts. Life finds a way forward, even when the shadows seem endless. The dinosaurs fell, but their kingdom did not vanish completely. It transformed. It lingers in every bird that sings, every fossil that whispers from stone, every mind that dares to imagine them alive again. But our story is not finished yet. The conclusion waits, a reflection on their legacy, and what their reign and their fall teaches us about ourselves. The thunder of the kingdom has faded, the twilight has passed. But in the silence that followed, something new began. And from that silence we ask, what is the true legacy of the dinosaurs? The story of the dinosaurs is not only about their rise or their fall. It is about time itself, a time so vast that human history seems like a flicker of light in comparison. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for over 160 million years. By contrast, humans have walked the planet for less than 500,000. If the history of Earth were a single day, dinosaurs would have reigned for more than 4 hours. Humanity's story, by that scale, would last only a few seconds before midnight. And yet, within those seconds, here we stand, looking back at the thunder of their reign, piecing together fragments, bones, and whispers in stone. Dinosaurs remind us of both our smallness and our connection. They were once the dominant force of the Earth, shaping landscapes, carving ecosystems, writing their presence into every corner of the globe. Their footsteps pressed the mud that would one day harden into rock. Their bones sank into the earth, becoming time capsules. Their legacy shaped the very world that would one day give rise to us. To study them is to study resilience, transformation, and fragility. The reign of the dinosaurs shows us that dominance is not permanence. For millions of years they thrived, survived extinctions, adapted to new challenges. Yet even they could not outlast catastrophe. Their twilight reminds us that power does not guarantee survival, that the Earth can change faster than even the greatest can endure. But their survival in the form of birds shows us something just as vital. Transformation can outlast destruction. The thunder of giant footsteps gave way to the flutter of wings. What seemed like an ending was also a beginning. The kingdom did not vanish, it evolved. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Step back for a moment and imagine the Earth as it was, a world of giants, herds stretching across plains, predators locked in eternal contests, skies alive with wings, seas ruled by reptiles larger than buses. Imagine the colors, bright crests, feathered plumes, shimmering scales. Imagine the sounds, the low calls of hadrosaurs, the roars of tyrants, the rush of wings across a dawn sky. That world is gone. But in a sense it is not lost. It is with us in every bird's song, every fossil revealed, every story told. It is with us in our awe, in the way children press their faces against museum glass, eyes wide as they stare up at skeletons that dwarf their imaginations. It is with us in the way we dream, the way we wonder, the way we seek to know what came before. Dinosaurs live on, not only in biology, but in memory. Science continues to bring them closer. Each fossil uncovered reveals new details, reshaping old images. Feathers instead of scales, color instead of gray, speed instead of sloth, intelligence instead of dullness. The story is not static, but alive as the creatures once were. And as science advances, we will see them ever more clearly, not as monsters of myth, but as animals, real, complex, magnificent. They remind us of the importance of humility. For if they could fall, so could we. The same forces that ended their reign, climate shifts, asteroids, volcanism, remain part of the Earth. Humanity's future is not guaranteed. Their story is a mirror, reflecting not only what was, but what could be. They also remind us of possibility. Life finds a way forward, even after catastrophe. From ashes rise survivors. From silence comes song. From extinction comes evolution. You've journeyed across millions of years through jungles, seas, deserts, and skies. You've walked among giants, faced predators, witnessed their twilight. If you could bring one dinosaur back to life, not in a movie, but truly, which would you choose and why? How would that choice shape your world? So what is the legacy of the dinosaurs? It is not just bones in stone. It is not just thunder long faded. It is the lesson that life is powerful, but also fragile, that time is vast, but also fleeting, that change is inevitable, but survival belongs to those who adapt. Dinosaurs were not failures. They were the most successful creatures ever to walk the earth. Their reign was not brief, but immense. Their fall was not weakness, but a reminder that even the greatest are bound to Earth's rhythms. and in the flutter of birds, in the science of paleontology, in the imagination of humanity, they continue still. When you see a hawk soaring overhead, you are seeing a dinosaur. When you hear the song of a sparrow, you are hearing the voice of survivors of an ancient kingdom. When you look into the eyes of a bird, you are looking into the living legacy of the Mesozoic. The kingdom never truly ended. It transformed, and it echoes. And so we close where we began. The earth scarred by extinction, the survivors rising, the whispers of giants still carried in stone and song. Dinosaurs may have fallen, but their story endures. It is a story of power, of fragility, of survival, and of wonder. A story that belongs not just to the past, but to us. For in the end, the kingdom of dinosaurs was never only theirs. It is part of the earth we walk, the sky we see, the history we inherit. And as long as we remember them, as long as we imagine them, as long as their shadows linger in science and story, they are not truly gone. The dinosaurs live on.